Hi, I'm Leslie Colmall with Art Insights Animation and Film Art Gallery in Reston Town Center, Virginia. I'm also with cinemasiren.com. And today we're talking to Bob Singer, who worked at Hanna-Barbera on some of your favorite cartoons. He is responsible for a lot of your favorite monsters in Scooby-Doo and worked on just tons and tons of cartoons. He started the character design department with Hanna-Barbera. He was a background artist with Warner Brothers, and he just has all sorts of great stories to tell. And so we're going to talk to Bob, and we're going to join him as he discusses how he started at Warner Brothers and his career. So thanks for joining us, and check out all the information and images and art on our website, artinsights.com, where you can find art that you can buy and more info on our blog about Bob Singer.
I went freelance around town trying to pick up work here and there. And then I was recommended for a job at Warner Brothers because it needed some science films, the same ones that Seamus was on. They picked up the contract, and they needed a storyboard man. But, you know, I had never done storyboards before. So I said, sure, I can do that. And I did a little bit of research and studying, and I had some friends help me, and I was hired, and I did 3 or 4 of those hour-long shows. Each had about 500 pieces of storyboard. It was really something. So I learned real fast.
And so you started doing storyboards, but you also worked in backgrounds. You did some backgrounds for some really famous cartoons. So
in between these pictures, they sent me to the Warner Brothers studio with the cartoon part. And they put me in a background department on Bob McKimson's unit. And the first one I did was called The Mouse That Jack Built.
Which I love. I love that cartoon. So talk about your experience working on that.
Well, you know, I did something different with that show. There was a scene where he goes down to the vault, and I decided to do it in colored pencil background instead of paint. And I went to the boss, and I said, can I do that? They said, well, okay, go ahead if you think it'll work. So I did it in colored pencil. I think it came out really great. It had a wood-like feeling down in the vault. So that was fun to do.
And those all wound up in the archives at Warner Brothers, because that's sad. We would love to see some of those at some point.
Yeah, I did about 8 Bugs Bunnies and Daffy Ducks and Foghorn Leghorns. Painted those backgrounds.
Oh, really? And so what are some of the, do you remember any of the actual backgrounds you did for some of those cartoons?
Well, I did one with the cartoon called A Witch's Tangled Hair with Bugs Bunny. And I was very proud of that particular one because I used a very dark kind of medieval look to the picture. And it's my favorite one that I painted, I think.
And so were you a fan of those cartoons at the time? Did you go and watch them, or were you too busy working? I mean, what was the experience of, I mean, were you working long hours, or what was it like at that time that you remember working in that environment?
It was so different than because we were in theatrical cartoons as opposed to TV cartoons. And in the theatrical cartoons, you had, I think, like 6 weeks to do the background painting on a cartoon, instead of as opposed to TV animation where you have to do it like in a week.
There's a huge difference there.
So it was a very nice, relaxed atmosphere. Everybody took their time. That's why they had such good quality.
And do you remember some of the people that you worked with other than Bob McKimson? Who else was there at the time?
Oh, I shared a room with a famous, I didn't know at the time how famous he was. Bob Gibbons was a very famous layout man and character designer. I found out much later. And we would spend the whole day playing Frank Sinatra records, and he would smoke his pipe. And so we had a very good time. We were both very quiet people, so we didn't talk very much, but we enjoyed it.
Frank did the talking for you. So you were when you went to Hanna-Barbera, what did you start out doing? I know you worked in the layout department for Space Ghost. Do you remember some of those early experiences?
Well, I started there in 1968. No, it wasn't 68. It was 64.
Okay.
And when they were doing the last of the Johnny Quest show. So after spending 2 weeks in layout, the layouts were finished. And I said, hey, I can paint backgrounds too. So they sent me upstairs to the background department and I painted 3 or 4 Johnny Quest shows. That was really something, it was all very realistic as opposed to cartoony.
Right. And you had already done other very realistic things so that you could really work wherever it is they needed you.
Yeah, actually, if I had to draw my own style for illustration, it would be more of a superhero, not more of an adventure style, like Scooby was. Scooby and I got along very well because that was my style.
And so then once you worked on the layout at Space Ghost, and then what is your experience? So you became a designer and you started the character design department at Hanna-Barbera. What was that and how did that work?
Can I tell you about Space Ghost first?
Oh, yeah, please.
I got onto layout for Space Ghost, and that was made right after Johnny Quest was finished. They went into Space Ghost and Dynaboy. But they were, I was new in the studio, and we got in trouble with the deadlines, and Bill Hanna called a meeting of the layout crew. And he said, what's wrong, guys? Why are we not making our deadline? Everybody was quiet, but I put my hand up like this. Yes, Bob, what is it? I said, there are too many backgrounds. Because I already knew I could do it in fewer, like 9 backgrounds instead of the usual 16 or so. So we went, after the meeting, they approached me, Mr. Takamoto, who was running layout at the time, said they want me to take over the show. So that was my first big break and recognized, I guess, for the fact that I was organized. And that led later, a few years later, to being taken over the layout department.
So you took over the layout department, and were you still on Space Ghost, or did you start skipping into different shows and then wound up on Scooby-Doo, or how did that work?
Well, there were maybe 4 or 5 different units. I mean, different cartoons being made there at one time. Besides the Flintstones, which I didn't work on really, there was a bunch of other cute cartoons, like Sinbad the Sailor was a short series we did, and Scooby-Doo came along, and I helped. I was in the presentation crew with Ivo Takamoto heading it. And he asked me to join him. So there were only a few of us. In fact, I think I'm the only one left who worked on Scooby-Doo, the presentation part. I'm going to outlive everybody, it looks like.
Yay!
Anyway, I was able to do the first layout on the first Scooby, and I sort of helped set the background style, which is not superheroes. Realistic, it was not cartoony, it was sort of in the middle, like I call it comedy adventure style. So that was just right up my alley. I love to draw that way. So I guess my style, I sort of had to set the series look.
What were the backgrounds, they look to some degree, a lot of them look like the South or like outside New Orleans or something. I mean, what was the inspiration for the backgrounds and for the style of the show?
I don't know. Maybe it was from the South. I never thought about that, but you could be right with the swamp monster,
right, exactly.
And the tar monster and all that.
So then there you started the character design department. What was that? And you did that for Scooby-Doo?
Well, I'll tell you, in the early days when they were only doing 3 or 4 shows, each layout man would design their own characters. But when we began to be very successful and more shows came in, I think at one point we did 14 different shows, each with 13 segments. I went to Jane Barbera, who was the production manager. I said, we need a character design department so these layout men don't have to do that. It'll speed up the production. And so she said, okay, Bob, go do it. And so with me and one other person named Curtis Kim, we started off with the two of us, and in short order, we were built up by hiring other artists into the studio. We had 15 designers. Of course, they weren't just doing characters, they were doing paste up and a lot of other things. But we began to be successful because Bill Hanna came to me at the end of that season and said, Bob, you did good. You got all the character designers out. He was interested in the fact that they made their deadlines.
Right.
Of course.
That's important.
Oh, yeah.
So you did, but one of the things that you created a lot in the character design department was the monsters in Scooby-Doo. What were some of the inspirations, or can you remember some of the characters that you did, and can you tell us about those?
Well, I'll show you.
Oh, good.
I just found this in my archives, but there's a whole bunch of characters I designed, a tar monster and a starman, and these are all rough drawings when I was trying to figure out what they looked like.
From back then? From back then?
Yes, I kept them in, I've given a lot of lectures at schools, colleges and grade schools, and I bring these boards along to explain what I did as an artist. And I must have like 15 different cards like this, but I thought since we're talking monsters with Scooby, this is what they look like, just beginning to draw them.
And so what was your guide for it? I mean, just pick any character on there and tell us about what was your inspiration or your guidance to create those characters.
There was one character that was very difficult for me to do. It was an electric monster. Now, what would you think of that he would look like?
Well, now I know because I've seen the cartoon, and so when I think of a monster, I think of Scooby-Doo.
I went to a power plant in Van Nuys, which is near the studio, and I looked at all the different things they had there, the different wires and cables, and I didn't come up with anything. So I decided to create a monster shape. And then I talked to the ink and paint department, and I told them, why don't you use paint all the character white and then a sponge of the texture on there. And then I said, let's shoot it on ones, which made it flicker.
Oh.
Got an electric look that way. So meanwhile, he was a hulking monster and with eyes and mouth, and the rest was just flickering like that. That's how we got that look. But it was fun designing those characters, like a tar man and all the rest.
Did you ever make a character that was a monster that was too scary, or that they said you couldn't use because he was too, or they were too?
No, they had to be a little scary. Of course, it turned out to be somebody in disguise at the end, which took the edge off that.
Yeah.
So we didn't know that we were going to be so successful with the show. All we were doing, just doing our daily work, and we were very happily surprised to find out that a lot of fans. I think Scooby's more popular now than Mickey Mouse was. Because he's all over the world.
Fighting words for Disney people. I agree with you. I love Scooby. You know what I think part of it is? I mean, a lot of people don't have mice as pets, but a lot of us have dogs and can relate to dogs. And also, if you have a neurotic dog, you can relate to Scooby-Doo because Scooby's a little bit neurotic and begs. And those are two qualities all of us who have had dogs are. Were you raised with dogs? Have you always had dogs?
No, just cats.
Me too. I have cats now. I was raised with dogs, so I can appreciate both of them. Did you ever have cat? Did you work on Top Cat or any other cats?
Oh, I did mostly publicity for those shows. For a while, I was head of publicity, and so I worked on a lot of stuff, and that led to the limited edition department when we had all those Hanna-Barbera stores.
Yeah.
And they came to me and asked me to do the first 12, one a month. And that's what kicked off that department. I've done over 45 different limited editions.
Wow. So the publicity department, back when the shows were on, what kinds of things did you do for them?
Mostly thing for variety and reporter ads. Like we had the Smurfs, and I was doing a lot of kind of publicity for the Smurfs show on advertising. And also when I went after I retired, I decided to do a lot of commission work,
Right.
and I did a lot of Smurfs and Scoobies and Flintstones, Jetsons. I did them all. I really enjoyed myself.
And you have done there, so you've been doing those for a while. You've done some commission pieces, and so that kind of grew out of you doing limited editions and kind of already having an understanding of layout and making them interesting to look at as art, because you were also doing publicity. So once you started doing those, then what's exciting or fun about creating these originals that I will have to sell people, and that we've seen, that we've had available for sale? What's fun about creating those?
Well, the studio would give me a list of characters in a theme. For instance, there's one edition I did is very long, must be 36 inches long, called Western Jamboree. And they gave me a list of about 20 characters. They said, let's make a Western scene. That's quite an assignment. I mean, what am I going to do? So I did it, and it was fun trying to figure out. I decided to make a little story here, a little story there, different characters doing this, so the person could look around and enjoy each part of it. And that was fun for me. It was very creative thinking. You have to dream up a lot of situations.